What's up, everybody? It's Alan's Movie Talk, back at it again. Just got back from seeing Flight Risk, so let's talk about it. Being a lifelong movie fan, am completely aware of the fact that most movies that are released in January, are most of the time not very good. And then, especially when it's released in January and the review embargo was not lifted until literally the first screenings on Thursday night started, it's not really a good sign. I went into this movie expecting a completely typical January film. Did I get that? Yes and no. I don't think this movie is a complete disaster and, where it was unbearable and I didn't enjoy myself. But there's also a lot about this film that just doesn't work and is almost terrible. We'll get more into that. But yeah, overall, not a terrible film, but not really a good one either. Because there's not as many, I am going to start off with the positives. And just right off rip, I think one of the best things about this film is the concept of it. It's a very straightforward story, but it is an interesting concept to have, the cop character, I don't remember the actor's name or the character's name, for that matter, take that as you will. The cop character and then Topher Grace's character, he is from what I understand, a money launderer for a big crime boss, and he is ratting on that crime boss. So the cop is escorting him from Antarctica to go testify against this mob boss. And Mark Wahlberg is the pilot of the flight, but secretly he was hired to kill Topher Grace's character. So getting that type of situation, while they're on a flight, is indeed an interesting concept. There were many things that I thought that the story could do to be interesting. I don't really think they were great on executing it, but the concept and the straightforwardness of it, I did find at least interesting and at least had me hooked at the beginning of the film. And then I will admit, from an enjoyment aspect, there are definitely certain scenes, certain interactions in the film that I did feel like had a so bad it's good, feeling and reaction for me. There were some scenes that I laughed at. I don't know if that was necessarily intentional by the film, but I at least found myself having a good time with kind of the campiness and the, goofiness of some of the characters and some of the interactions that they were having with one another. So I know, these positives that I'm talking about kind of seem like negatives, but I will at least give the movie credit that it had me entertained for an hour and a half, and it at least had me interested. I didn't really find myself bored at any point in time in the film. But essentially, that is where my positives end. Everything else about this film is just not great. The main thing, and the one that is the most obvious, and the one that people are probably going to talk about the most, is that the tone of this film is so inconsistent. And that comes down to the actors, very much so. I think it's really the actors and their performances that really create that inconsistency in the tone. Because of the fact there's only three characters really throughout this entire runtime that you're face to face with. There are other characters who get interjected in other ways that are in the film, but when the main 90%, 95% of the story takes place on this plane with three characters, and all the characters are giving such wildly different performances, the film really never at any point allowed it really never developed an identity because it was just like all over the place. So, and honestly, the worst of them all is Topher Grace. I don't know his name, and honestly, I don't care enough to look up his name because the characters were terrible, and I didn't really care. But his character honestly feels like he is in an episode of That 70s Show, times like 100. His line delivery and just the way he acts compared to Mark Wahlberg and the woman who plays the cop, it was almost like he was in a completely different universe of the movie that they were all in together. There was nothing at all that was consistent of his character with the rest of the film. And Mark Wahlberg is, I mean, really all of them are inconsistent with one another. Mark Wahlberg, though, I felt like, and the girl were at least like somewhat in the same movie. His Mark Wahlberg's performance was really weird too. His character was just like really creepy and had a lot of crude humor that I didn't really think worked all that well. Like I said, in some moments I felt like it was so bad it was good, where I was laughing, and I don't think that was intentional. But yeah, it was just weird performances from both of them. And then the girl cop, her performance is just like pretty much stoic and super serious. So the direction, I have to, say, from Mel Gibson was just not great, because the way he directed his actors in this film, it just didn't work at all. There was nothing about it that worked. Like I said, from a story and like a movie making, aspect, there was really nothing here that worked. So I do understand a lot of the criticisms that this film is getting so far, on it being one of the worst movies ever. Like I said, I had a little bit of fun, but everything that happened here was pretty rough, and that's very surprising coming from someone like Mel Gibson. I mean, I know that a lot of people don't like him for personal reasons and some of the stuff he's done, but there's no denying that as a director and a writer, he has done great work in the past. So it's been a while, obviously, since he's made a movie, but seeing, having him come back for this, I'm like, hey man, you should have just retired or waited for something better, because this was just not it. And then again, I wasn't really expecting much from this film just because of all the signs, that were pointing to this film being a disaster. But the logic of this film just made absolutely no sense. I mean, characters make stupid decisions consistently. And not even just stupid decisions, like things happen in the film where, I don't want to spoil anything, I guess, but there was a moment, essentially, I'll kind of get into a mild spoiler here. There's a moment where Mark Wahlberg is tied up. You saw it in the trailer. He gets tied up after they get into an altercation. And he's trying to get a knife that essentially was under the pilot's seat's chair. And it kind of falls down, and he gets it with his foot. And there's at a point where he's stomping on the ground, like stomping. And I understand that they kind of set it up earlier that the headphones are blocking out the noise and everything like that, but he was so loud that I was like, there's no way not one of them on this flight would have heard him. So it's just stuff like that. Like, there's just so many inconsistencies and things that just happen that don't make sense. There's a situation with a phone that I'm like, I don't know how this is working, but there was a lot about this film, like tonally and story-wise, and just like common sense that just did not add up. I mean, it was just like all over the place. And then the dialogue, it's just atrocious. I mean, there's nothing else I can really say about it. It is just so bad. The script here was just, there was just nothing to it. I mean, I feel for the actors because they really were not given much of anything to work with, but I don't think in their delivery they really help themselves either. And again, I kind of tend to blame that more on the direction and what Mel Gibson was going for with this film than I really want to blame the actors for it. Because I think, this is just my opinion, I think they were doing what they were told. But it was just not good. There was just like a lot of it that was not good. Like I said, there were some parts of it that I enjoyed because of how cheesy and like bad it was. It kind of became so bad it was good. But a lot of that happened too in the first act. So the longer into the movie you got, I felt like it really wore on you, and it wasn't as fun as it was earlier in the film. So yeah, I mean, this is a bad movie. There's really nothing else I can say. I don't think it's going to be the worst movie of the year. I'll say that. Because, like I said, I think there's a little bit of enjoyment out of it because it's so bad that you kind of get some laughs out of it. And the performances from specifically Topher Grace is just so over the top that you can get some enjoyment out of it, and you can still consistently watch it and not feel like it's dragging its feet or anything like that. But outside of that, man, this was this is the typical January release that we expect from movies. I've only seen Better Man and Wolfman, which both of those movies I didn't love, but I didn't hate them either. They weren't the dumpster fire that, January films typically are. So I was like, man, and we got Companion coming next week, which I've heard great things about. So I was thinking to myself, like, man, we really haven't gotten any, like, dud movies or really bad movies from January. Then I saw Flight Risk, and I was like, oh, that's coming out this month. Okay, never mind. We'll definitely get there. So yeah, really not great. I would probably give it, like a 1.75 out of 5. Very little things about this that, might work, but for the most part, not a great film. So now that I got the review out of the way, there's something that I wanted to talk about and discuss on this video that, I feel like has become a reoccurring problem with the movie-going theater experience, and it's one that I dealt with when I was seeing this movie, and that is the theater etiquette of everybody involved. At the very end of this film, and it was within, like, the last scene, the resolution of the plot happened, everything basically got wrapped up, and in the very last scene, there were two guys who had some type of argument. I don't know if it was because one was talking throughout the entire film. I was a few rows back and couldn't really, hear anything that was going on during the movie. And there was two guys who essentially just got into a screaming match right as the movie was ending. And I decided to leave because I felt uncomfortable and didn't know what was going to happen in that situation, and I didn't want to stick around to find out. It's just another example of theater etiquette and where it's at today, where people, for some reason, I don't really know why anyone would want to do this, they decide to buy a ticket to a movie, come to the movie theater, and just be as disruptive and disrespectful as possible to everybody else that is also there, who also paid for a ticket and also has every right to be there and to want to enjoy the movie that they're seeing. And it's one of the things, in my opinion, it's not the only thing, but it's one of the things that is essentially giving a slow death to the movie theaters and the movie theater experience in general. It's just a common courtesy. Like, when you go to a movie theater, it's not hard to just be quiet and watch the film. If you want to talk during a movie, movies now come out 4 to 6 weeks after they release in theaters, because of the shorter theatrical windows. So when you watch movies, you want to talk, you don't want to do anything, but essentially sit in your chair, watch the movie, and react when it's appropriate in the movie, then don't go to the movie theater. I mean, you're just ruining the experience for everybody involved. And it's why ticket sales and attendance is down right now. It's not, like I said, it's not the only reason. There are multiple other reasons. But that is one that is big. And it's one that I have seen consistently get worse and worse since COVID. Really, that was really when there was issues with it beforehand, but COVID is really when it started to go down the drain. And it's the one aspect of the movie theater going experience that no one can really control because theaters don't want to do anything about it. They don't want to enforce rules, especially at big chains. I go to Cinemark and AMC, and it always notoriously happens there, and then nothing ever actually happens. No employees ask them to leave. They just continue to disrupt and ruin the film for everybody, and if you complain about it, they just say, okay, we'll give you a refund. Well, you ruined my time. I mean, you already ruined my time to come see this movie. Giving me a refund doesn't really do me anything, especially, when I'm an AMC A-list member and a Cinemark Movie Club member. I'm not actually paying for this individual ticket. I just pay a subscription to be here. So you're really just taking away my time, and you're not actually compensating me for it. And then it just happens again and again. So it's very frustrating. I really wish people who don't want to go to the theater and be respectful to the other people in the auditorium just wouldn't. So, yeah. Sorry. I wanted to just rant about that at the end after I reviewed the film. So if you have any comments about that, go ahead and comment below. I would love to have a conversation about it and see if other people feel the same way I do. And, if you have any comments about Flight Risk as well, go ahead and comment below. And everybody have a great night.